"I think we should settle this before the wedding," he said, and slid a thick white envelope across the table until it stopped inches from my plate. The Christmas music in the background suddenly felt 100 miles away, and nobody at that table had any idea what was actually about to happen to their evening. I want to tell you what was going through my mind in that silence, because I don't think anyone in that room would have guessed it. My name is Thomas Reich. I'm 72 years old, and most people who meet me assume I'm just another retired man, stretching a fixed income until the next check comes in. I don't blame them for that. My truck is 20 years old. My winter coat has a patch sleeve. My boots have been resoled twice. I drink coffee at the same diner every Tuesday morning and mow my own lawn. And none of that has ever bothered me, because none of it is the whole truth. What very few people know is that I retired from the United States Army as a 4-star general after nearly 4 decades of service. My pension alone runs a little over $28,000 a month. My home's been paid off for years. My late wife and I built a careful, substantial set of investments. Over decades, I've been financially comfortable for a long time. Comfort was just never something I felt any need to advertise, especially after I lost her. Eleanor used to say something to me almost every Christmas while she wrapped presents in our living room. "Thomas," she'd tell me, "if you ever want to know a person's true character, let them believe you have nothing." I thought she was just being philosophical back then. Years later, I understood. She'd handed me one of the most useful tools I've ever owned. My daughter, Claire, had begged me to spend Christmas with her fiancé Nathan's family. "Dad," she'd said over the phone a week earlier, "it'll mean a lot to him." I smiled and told her I thought he usually went skiing over the holidays. "He changed his plans," she said. "Why?" I asked. She hesitated. "He wants both families together before the wedding." That sounded reasonable enough, so I accepted right away. I didn't tell her I'd already been noticing changes in Nathan over the past year. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would make headlines, just small things. He'd started judging restaurants by their valet service. He complimented expensive watches more than he complimented people. He spoke to waitstaff differently than he spoke to business partners. Whenever he visited my house, he'd glance around the living room with a kind of polite disappointment, like he was wondering why anyone would still own furniture older than their grandchildren. Never openly cruel, just quietly dismissive. The sort of arrogance that hides comfortably behind good manners. I don't think Claire noticed. Or maybe she didn't want to. That afternoon, I put on my oldest brown coat on purpose. The zipper had been replaced years back, the elbows showing honest wear. Eleanor used to tease me that I'd probably be buried in that thing. I smiled at the memory before climbing into my old pickup. The drive across Richmond took about 35 minutes. Modest neighborhoods slowly giving way to big brick homes, trimmed hedges, luxury SUVs lining every curb. Every house on that street looked like a holiday postcard. Nathan's parents lived at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. A beautiful home, nothing excessive, just clearly successful. Claire greeted me first, hugging me tight. "I'm so glad you came," she said. "So am I told her. Nathan appeared a moment later. "Merry Christmas, Thomas," he said. He always called me Thomas. Never Dad, never Mr. Reich. I never corrected him. He shook my hand, his eyes drifting briefly toward my coat. You know it's freezing out, right? He said. It is. I agreed you should let Claire buy you a real winter coat. Claire looked embarrassed. Instantly, Dad likes that coat, she said. Nathan laughed. Everyone deserves an upgrade eventually, he said. So I've heard, I told him, smiling. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey and fresh pine. Family photographs lining every wall. Everything warm and comfortable. Nathan's mother, Vivian, welcomed me politely. His father, Gerald, gave me a firm handshake. And unlike Nathan, his eyes stayed on my face the whole time. Not my clothes, not my truck out front, just my face. That small detail stayed with me all evening. Dinner began, conversation flowing easily. Vacation homes, the stock market, wine. Collections. I listened more than I spoke. At some point, Nathan told a story about a coworker laughing as he said, "If you're still broke by 65, you probably made bad decisions your whole life." A few people chuckled. Retirement should be comfortable if people plan ahead, he added, glancing my way. Planning matters, I said, calmly slicing another piece of turkey. It sure does, Vivian said, smiling sympathetically. It must be difficult living on a fixed income these days. Claire shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Before I could answer, Nathan spoke for me. Thomas manages, he said. Manages. An interesting choice of word. I just smiled, because I wasn't there to defend myself. I was there to observe. Eleanor had been gone 6 years, but her lesson was still very much alive in me. Let people believe you have nothing. Eventually, dessert arrived, then coffee, then a slower kind of quiet settled over the table. Gerald stood, walked to the sideboard, retrieved a sealed envelope, and slid it across toward me. I think we should settle this before the wedding, he said. I opened it. The first page read, Marital Property Agreement. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. For 2 full minutes, the only sound in the room was paper turning under my fingers. I want to be honest with you. I've opened mission briefings before dawn in my career. I've opened letters informing families of unimaginable loss. Compared to those mornings, an envelope at a Christmas dinner should have felt easy. And yet, something in the faces around that table told me this piece of paper was about to change several lives. Before the night was over, I didn't sign it. I didn't argue with it. I laid it back inside the envelope and folded my hands on the table, and nobody seemed sure what my silence meant. Nathan looked almost amused. I'm sure you understand, he said. It's standard these days. Vivian nodded. We're only trying to protect the family's assets, I told her calmly. I believe every family should protect what they've worked for. Relief crossed Nathan's face. He thought I agreed. Gerald never relaxed, though he kept watching me, like he suspected there was something the rest of the room had completely missed. Claire stared down into her coffee, and I could almost hear her heart breaking a little. She's always hated conflict. Watching her like that took me straight back to another Christmas, years earlier, when she was only 8. Eleanor was still alive then. Claire had wanted the newest bicycle in the neighborhood. Every friend of hers had one. Bright paint, fancy gears. Money wasn't the issue. Eleanor and I could have bought her one easily. Instead, Eleanor found an older bike at a church charity sale. Scratched frame, crooked basket, faded paint. Claire's face fell the moment she saw it. Eleanor just smiled and told her, "Ride it for 1 week, but everybody else has new ones." Claire said, "I know," Eleanor answered. "Why can't I?" "Because I want you to learn something before life teaches it to you the hard way," Eleanor told her, kneeling down. A week later, Claire came home smiling. "My best friend didn't care what bike I rode," she said. Eleanor kissed her forehead. "Exactly," she said. Then she looked over at me and told me quietly, "People who care about appearances usually reveal themselves before you even have to ask." That lesson stayed with me a lot longer than Claire probably ever realized. It stayed with me long after Eleanor was gone. Cancer doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care how many medals you've earned or how many soldiers you've led. It simply takes. 4 decades in the army had prepared me for a lot of things. Nothing prepared me for walking into an empty house after 50 years of marriage. For months, I kept setting out 2 coffee cups before. Remembering she wasn't there, I'd hear a joke on television and turn instinctively to tell her, and silence would answer every single time. Eventually, I stopped filling the empty side of the closet, stopped reaching across the bed at night. But I never stopped hearing her wisdom, especially about people. She believed character was easiest to see the moment money stopped being part of the equation. After she passed, I made a decision. I wasn't going to change how I live just because I could afford to. The old truck stayed. The old coat stayed. The same neighborhood stayed. Friends asked why sometimes. My answer never changed, because everything I own already works. Some laughed. Some didn't understand. I never felt much need to explain further. My time at West Point had shaped me the same way. One of my instructors told me once, "Rank is borrowed." At 22, I didn't fully understand that by 72 I understood it completely. Every promotion, every salute, every title eventually belongs to somebody else. Only your character stays with you. That's what kept my feet on the ground, even after I pinned on my 4th star. People imagine generals living glamorous lives. Reality looks nothing like that. Years away from family birthdays, missed anniversaries celebrated over satellite. Phones, funerals attended, young soldiers buried, decisions that follow you long after retirement. The stars on my shoulder never made me better than anyone else. They just reminded me how much responsibility sat there. That's why I rarely brought up my career. After retiring, I didn't need strangers thanking me for my service. Every time I ordered breakfast, I preferred talking about fishing, the weather, baseball, my grandkids. Someday life felt lighter that way. Claire met Nathan nearly 3 years after Eleanor died. She called me one Saturday afternoon, and I heard something different in her voice right away. "What is it?" I asked. "I met someone," she said. I smiled. "Oh, I think you'll like him." A month later, she brought him to my house, carrying a homemade pecan pie. That impressed me right away. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, asked about my vegetable garden. For months, I genuinely liked him. He'd built a successful commercial real estate business before turning 40. He treated Claire well and laughed easily. Nothing seemed off. Then, success started changing him. Not overnight, gradually, almost invisibly. The first sign came at a local steakhouse. An older waitress accidentally spilled some water near our table, apologizing repeatedly. Before I could tell her it was fine, Nathan sighed loudly and asked, "Can we get someone a little quicker?" She looked embarrassed and walked off. I quietly said she seemed overwhelmed. If people can't keep up, they shouldn't do the job. He shrugged. Claire looked uncomfortable. I changed the subject. Months later, driving through my neighborhood, he glanced out the window and told Claire her dad should really sell this place. Why? I asked. He could move somewhere nicer, he said. I liked my house, I told him. No offense, Thomas, he laughed. But this neighborhood peaked about 30 years ago. So did I said. He laughed harder, thinking I'd made a joke. I hadn't. The comments kept coming after that. Admiring watches, judging people by their cars, talking about wealth like it measured someone's discipline. Once standing in my garage, he noticed my old toolbox and shook his head. Said I could afford better equipment if I'd planned my finances properly. Dad's always been careful with money, Claire said, confused. I know, he said. I'm just saying, retirement catches up with everyone, eventually. I just closed the toolbox. Everything to go well? I asked if something was bothering her. No, she said, a little too fast. A father knows. There was something she wasn't saying. I didn't push, though. After we hung up, I walked into my bedroom and opened Eleanor's old cedar chest. Letters, photographs, ornaments, and that old brown winter coat she loved teasing me about. I lifted it out, smiled, and said out loud, even though nobody was there to hear it, "Well, Ellie, I guess we're about to find out what kind of family our girl is marrying into." On Christmas morning, I slipped that coat over my shoulders. Not because it was warm, not because I couldn't afford another. Sometimes the simplest disguise tells you the most about the people sitting across the table from you. And by the time dessert was served that night, I realized Eleanor had been right all over again. This had never really been about money. It had always been about respect, and that envelope waiting beside my coffee cup was only the beginning. I folded the prenuptial agreement neatly and slipped it back into the envelope. Nobody reached for dessert anymore. Nathan finally broke the silence. "So, what do you think?" he asked, friendly enough, confident, almost rehearsed. "I think legal documents deserve careful reading," I told him. "Exactly," he said. "His attorney must have charged a fortune," I added. "Every paragraph carefully crafted, every asset thoroughly listed. From a legal standpoint, I had no complaints. From a father's standpoint, I had several." I closed the folder. "May I ask a question?" I said. "Of course," Nathan answered. "If Claire signs this tomorrow, what exactly is she protecting?" He looked surprised. "My family's assets," he said. "I understand," I said. "My business. I understand. My investments, my retirement accounts." "I understand all of it," I told him. "I've spent 15 years building everything I have," he said. "I respect that," I told him. "So what's the problem?" "The problem isn't what you're protecting," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "It's what you're assuming." The room went quiet again. "What do you mean?" he asked. I gently tapped the section describing Claire's financial position. "This document says my daughter enters this marriage with very little," I told him. His attorney had estimated her net worth at under by 1 Mayori. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was so astonishingly wrong. That's basically true, Nathan shrugged. Claire looked at me confused. Dad, I turned to her. Sweetheart, I said, have I ever discussed my estate with you? She blinked. No. Have I? Ever shown you my investment accounts? No. My trust documents? No. My retirement income? No. She looked embarrassed. I never asked, she said. I know, I told her, smiling. And I appreciated that. Nathan crossed his arms. I'm not sure what this has to do with the agreement, he said. It has everything to do with it, I told him. Vivian spoke gently. We're just trying to avoid future misunderstandings. I admire that, I told her. Then why are you objecting? Nathan asked. I'm not objecting to the document, I said. I'm objecting to the assumptions underneath it. I reached inside my coat, not for a wallet, not for a checkbook, but for a thin leather folder that's traveled with me for years, holding emergency contacts, medical information, my military ID, and a few documents Eleanor had insisted I always keep close. I laid it beside the envelope. Claire looked at it curiously. I've never seen that, she said. You've never needed to, I told her. I opened it slowly. The first thing I pulled out was a simple blue ID card, my retired military identification. I slid it across the table. Nathan picked it up first. His expression didn't change right away. Then his eyes stopped moving. He read the line beneath my photograph again. His face slowly lost its color. He looked at me, back down at the card, then read it. Once more, finally whispering, General Nobody answered. Vivian reached for the card, adjusted her glasses, then froze. Oh, she said. Claire leaned in, her mouth falling open. Dad, she said. She couldn't finish the sentence. Nathan kept shaking his head. No, he said. I smiled gently. Yes. I want you to sit with me in this next part, because I still think this is the longest, slowest, most important few minutes of that whole evening. Gerald finally spoke. I thought so, he said. Every eye turned to him. You knew, Nathan said. Not exactly, his father answered. But I suspected he wasn't, telling us everything. Nathan stared at both of us. You mean? Gerald cut in quietly. The way he carries himself, he said. I asked him what rank he'd retired with. Out on the porch. You did, I said. You never answered. I didn't. I told him because you didn't need to. For several long moments, nobody spoke. Then Claire finally asked the question. I don't think she'd ever imagined having to ask her own father. Dad, were you a general? A 4-star general, I told her. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. You never asked, I said gently. I wanted you to know me, I told her. Not my rank. She covered her mouth. Oh my God, she whispered. I had no idea. I know, I said. I'm sorry, she said. For what? I asked. I thought you were just an old man, she said. I nodded slowly. That's exactly what I wanted, I told her. Nathan still hadn't found any words. He kept staring at the ID card. Finally, he managed. Why would you hide something like that? I looked at him, calm as anything. Why would I advertise it? I asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was no answer to give me. Vivian finally asked, So, you've been receiving a military pension all these years? Yes, I said. How much? She asked. I hesitated. Gerald answered for me. "It doesn't matter," he said. "You're right," I told him. But Nathan looked desperate now. "How much?" he asked. Again, I met his eyes. "A little over $28,000 a month," I told him. Silence. Complete. Total silence. Vivian's coffee cup slipped slightly against its saucer. Claire just stared. Nathan looked like the floor had disappeared out from underneath him. His entire picture of me had collapsed in under 30 seconds. But I wasn't finished yet. I reached back into the leather folder. "There are 2 more things you should probably see," I told them, pulling out several folded documents. Trust summaries, nothing confidential, just enough to explain. "I put these together after Eleanor passed," I said. Claire took them first, her hands trembling as she read. What she said, looking up. "Dad?" I nodded. "The house," she said, reading further. "It's already in my name," I told her. "Since when?" she asked. 3 years ago," I said. Her eyes went wide. "You never told me," she said. "You didn't need to know then," I told her. "Another page, the lake cabin, also yours," I said. She gasped softly. "The investment accounts," I continued. "Those too." She looked completely overwhelmed. "I wanted everything arranged long before I was gone," I told her. Nathan's breathing had slowed noticeably, like he was trying to process numbers that no longer fit the story he'd told himself. "There are education trusts for every future grandchild," I continued. Claire burst into tears again. "There are charitable funds too," I said. "Another page, and enough investments managed responsibly that your children will never have to wonder whether their grandfather cared."